Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Quantum Cowboys.
Hello, and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. At least we might be, in a certain dimension, timeline, universe. I don't know about tonight. I guess we'll find out.
We can be both right and wrong.
This is true. I guess. I don't know.
Schrodinger's Contrarians. Until you listen to the podcast, both options are true.
I'm just curious which type of animation we would be, as there's no shortage of different animation styles in our film du jour, as we're here today to talk about a recent film, Quantum Cowboys, starring, amongst other people, the Academy Award nominated Lily Gladstone, as well as the former World Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, David Arquette.
The team up you were waiting for.
Yeah, the duo you didn't know you needed. And an interesting discussion is ahead of us, Julio, especially for our gimmick here. This fits perfectly. We'll get to why in just a moment, and we'll get to why we're talking about this movie in just a moment. But Lily Gladstone making her Contrarians main feed debut. We did have a spirited discussion of Killers of the Flower Moon over on our Patreon page. But Lily Gladstone making her live action and animated main feed Contrarians debut.
This is the reality where she was not nominated for an Oscar. She's stuck doing art house movies.
Fair to say that not since Southland Tales have we discussed this unique of a film, Julio. Can you think of anything else?
Man, and Southland Tales wasn't even on the main feed. There's some patron stuff. And
yes.
Here, Alex, you're going to hate the comparison because you hate it every time I bring it up. But Greener Grass seems to me like something that is...
That's a strange film. Yeah.
It's a strange movie that kind of took us for a spin. We didn't review that movie. That movie reviewed us.
Sadly, there's nothing in Quantum Cowboys that will forever stick with me, quite like the scene in Greener Grass where our main character starts ripping her own braces off with a pair of pliers. That haunts me.
I think you got to talk about Beck Bennett in the pool.
That's there too. That something. What was watching some old SNL the other day or some shit, and I just saw Beck Bennett. I just started laughing to myself, thinking of him drinking pool water. It's so stupid, but it killed me. So, Quantum Cowboys here today, Julio. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, that's not from. It's not certified fresh, and that's not from a litany of reviews, but that's still something. 100%. But before we get to the reviews and what critics are saying about it, Julio, why are we talking about this movie?
Why, indeed. This is the last movie in the collection of Contrarians picks that Katie and Oti, those lovely patrons and podcasters, gave me a while ago. So I've been slowly chipping away at that list that they gave us, and well, this is it. We've reached, like, this was the last, you're handing out presents at Christmas, and this is the last one at the bottom of the bag. Was it fate, Alex? Maybe. But whatever the case, this is a 100%er, as you said, and that small amount of reviews comprises, part of those are Katie's and Oti's reviews, because they are certified Rotten Tomatoes critics, and their fresh quotes are there on the page on the Rotten Tomatoes app. They show up there with their pictures. This is legit. So we're not going to read those quotes just yet. The Katie and Oti quotes, I saved them for real talk. But yeah, they liked this movie and they said, sure, give it the Contrarians treatment.
Well, before we do so, Julio, which quotes did you pull for us for Contrarians Corner?
Observation elevates a single lowly possibility into the only possible reality, a single collective memory.
All right, Quantum Cowboys, 100% of the Tomatometer, 90% of the popcorn meter. But, you know, according to Rotten Tomatoes, what do audiences know? It's all about the critics, such as critic Leo Brady from amovieguy.com, who says Quantum Cowboys has a big cast with a variety of personalities, and what it all becomes is a fascinating and even brilliant new Western that colors outside the lines of what the genre has typically offered.
I see what she did there. I don't like it.
So, I mean, a few points of contention here. When he's saying big cast, what exactly is he talking about? He's not talking about big names, right? We love.
I would hope not.
We love David Arquette, but the Scream days are long past him. And Lily Gladstone was not Lily Gladstone when this came out. I mean, not Academy Award nominee Lily Gladstone. So
Killers of the Flower Moon was 2023, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this came out in 2022. So she was. Yeah, Arquette was the marquee.
You know you're in trouble when.
I mean, Alex Cox is in this, which is cool, but that's his days of being a teen heartthrob are long behind him. And yeah, the director had to assume one of the roles in this. So big cast, I guess that's meaning that there's multiple scenes that factor in like upwards of 5 or 6 characters at once. But yeah, it's pretty liberal use of the word big there.
Size is relative.
Or ambiguous, not liberal.
Yeah. Well, and then coloring outside the lines of what the genre has typically offered, I instantly, we did Unforgiven somewhat recently. I think within this Contrarians fiscal year. I don't think that you get a more typical Western than that, and contrast it with Quantum Cowboys. And I think Clint Eastwood would have an aneurysm if you told him that they're both in the same genre.
Yeah, I mean, this is a experimental art house film about time travel and the notion of different realities that's like given the garb of a Western. But it's not like there's like airplanes and cars and shit. I mean, come on.
Some people with a camera and like a boom mic.
We don't have to look very far for the coloring outside of the lines Westerns using one of the players from this movie. David Arquette, not just in Bone Tomahawk, one of my favorites, but covered in Contrarians history. He was in Ravenous, which is a Western that certainly was outside of the norm.
I see your Bone Tomahawk. I see your Ravenous, and I raise you a Quantum Cowboys. This is how you use Arquette. All right. Moving on to Clear Jennings from, what is this name? But Why Though? A Geek Community. Collier Jennings says, mixes together animation, the Western genre, and quantum mechanics for a trippy film that defies comprehension. Trippy films, Alex. I think that we've done a few on the show. For some reason, my mind goes all the way to Contrarians Year 1 and Natural Born Killers. Just the idea that Oliver Stone was on heavy drugs when shooting that movie. Some of the things that happened there. Can you see the same usage of drugs while this movie is being produced? Like, are people just high out of their minds when they're coming up with the aesthetic for Quantum Cowboys?
I don't know about that, but I can see a direct line from Natural Born Killers to this. And I would agree with the defies comprehension.
To a fault.
One of my first notes is, oh God, this is going to be confusing.
Yes. Never a good sign when the first 5 to 10 minutes of your movie are just an explanation of what the movie is about.
The first 10 minutes of this movie are the architect's speech from Matrix Reloaded.
And from then, it gets confusing. Next, Chase Hutchinson from Collider says, it is the vibrancy to the presentation that remains the standout, though the performances are also good fun. In particular, Gladstone once again shows she can inhabit any character and make them feel like someone you've known for a lifetime. Alex, if we didn't have the benefit of having seen and liked Killers of the Flower Moon, and specifically Lily Gladstone's performance in Killers of the Flower Moon, do you think you would walk away from this movie thinking, man, that's an actress to keep an eye on?
She is unequivocally the best part of this movie. So the difference with that is I didn't walk away from this movie thinking much good. So with her, yeah, it'd be difficult to say, but she is quite great in this.
Really? You're putting her above the champ?
Yeah. I mean, David Arquette he comes across as a seasoned veteran, which is what he is in this. And I think a lot of his delivery is good. The problem is he's stunted a bit with the actor he's saddled with, not Matthew Fox.
By now, he had already done Bon Tomahawk, so he could categorically say, you are not Matthew Fox.
Exactly.
I know Matthew Fox, and you, sir, are not him. We're going to close with Michael Talbot Haynes from Film Threat, who says, due to its gentle nature and familiar Western gear, Quantum Cowboys is one of the best entry-level trip movies ever made. Back again to the idea of trip movies, trippy movies. Is this entry-level, Alex?
That sounds so demeaning.
To the movie, but also to the audience that, like you and I, if you're confused by this movie and then they tell you, oh, dude, that is basic shit.
Yeah, that's so patronizing. You see, that going back to Natural Born Killers, I would refer to that as entry level. And
yeah,
because there's not really things in that premise that are confusing. Here, I would tell someone like, yeah, it's going to like really be visually stimulating, overstimulating to a point, but you kind of have to pay attention to the plot. Otherwise, you get lost real quick. So entry level, I disagree with.
Yeah, there's no Tommy Lee Jones to hold you by the hand and take you all the way to the end of the movie.
Not just in the genre of trip movies, but as the medium as a whole, there is no Tommy Lee Jones and Natural Born Killers in anything but that movie.
Anyway, that was the last quote, Alex. Had to be pretty precious in how I picked them and how many I picked, because as we said, there's not a whole lot of them, but more to come on the second half. But for now, let's go into Contrarians Corner.
Everybody everywhere always never remembers it right.
Do you think wrong would be better or worse, though?
All right, this one's going to be a bit different in that with our format over the past, couple of years, we've really gotten into a groove of referencing different websites for plot summations and whatnot and following it that way. There is no real entry on the internet as far as a bit by bit breakdown of the premise.
Nobody was up to the task.
Quantum Cowboys. But also that's because a lot of this movie is repetitive and there's a lot of acting out of the same scenes, but just in a different fashion, not unlike, the beginning and end of 12 Monkeys or something like that.
Groundhog Day. If you want to go to the classics.
Looper.
There you go.
But I'm going to lean on my co-host a bit more than usual to recount the premise.
Son of a bitch.
I think what we're going to be doing largely here for Contrarians Corner is giving an overview of the plot, but also like talking about our characters and the performances therein. So
all of you listening who were hoping we would hold the key to explaining what the movie was about, you're out of luck, but we'll try.
We'll give it our best. So I have the quote from the beginning of this movie that says, "Art is the only record of memories." And they go on to explain that animation is the only true art. And the gentleman explaining all this, the character's name is Memory, being played by Patrick Page. And we made the joke already, or I did, I should say, about the architect in The Matrix, but that's essentially what this character is. He has a cat, and we get these different iterations of him, be it live action or claymation, or he's kind of like Picasso together in some parts of this movie. Julio, is this the guy that's supposed to be like running the show? Is this God?
Is he? I guess at some point he says that he puts together what ends up being the final product, right? He collects samples from different potential realities, and then he puts them together. And it's like, so I guess he's making the call. he says, okay, I like this part and I like this part from other place and whatever. And then there's a very helpful, in quotation marks, text that comes up at some point while he's saying this that says, the memories look different because they're from different timelines. And I was like, all right. I just wish that there was somebody that was the audience surrogate. If you want to have your trippy god that's going to talk in riddles, like exactly like the architect at the end of the Matrix Reloaded, you also need like a Neo, right? You need a guy who's like, I don't get it. What? So, which opens the door for maybe a more dumbed down explanation. But there's nobody here because, he's talking directly to you and you don't get to ask any questions to the screen. You're just like, all right, what next? So I guess he could be God. He could be the filmmaker. He could be, I don't know, man. Maybe he just works for God. This is just the guy that is in charge of memories. I couldn't tell you. Yeah. But what I can tell you is that it's really frustrating when he's having a one-sided conversation with you. I didn't sign up for this class. I wanted to watch a movie. But instead, it's like this dude unloading all this information, all this exposition and throwing like buzzwords to try to get me excited, right? Like whoever made this movie, whoever wrote this movie, they know that if you're sitting down to watch Quantum Cowboys, you're probably a film buff. You watch movies. So they throw these bullshit statements about art in life, but it didn't work for me. Were you engaged? How long did it take for you to tune out? And like, oh, here's this guy again going to explain stuff that I'm not going to understand.
Pretty quick, because even in this opening soliloquy from this fella, I was just like, God damn it, is this going to be what the whole movie is? So even though I wouldn't say I had checked out per se, my mind was already somewhere else of dreading what this movie was potentially going to be. And it doesn't start in a way that would dissuade me from thinking that, because then we see like a film crew that's recording or documenting what's going on in this alternate reality or timeline. Julio, they appear like 3 times throughout the movie. The not the director, but I believe the fellow holding the boom mic is the shoot director of this movie. What purpose do they serve here? Are they the messengers of God, or do they collect the data for God?
I don't know. I really don't know. Contrarians Corner, real talk. This is one of those things where I really couldn't tell you what the purpose is of those guys, because at first I thought, okay, they are the ones that are making the call, right? Like they choose what to record, and what they record becomes reality, so to speak, or becomes official reality. But that doesn't make sense if the old guy is the one that's actually putting stuff together. So they're just recording every possible iteration of something that happens, right? Well, that seems like an infinite job. Like, how are you done? How do you know that you're done collecting possibilities? I don't think that there's an answer, because I don't think that this movie ever, like whoever was making the movie never sat down to like really think things through. They're just like, what would it be cool if they were just like shooting the different possibilities of what could happen? Okay, but then how does it end? And I hate that. I mean, I'm glad that we're just kind of like jumping around, but like, I hate that this crew towards the end when they show up. I think every time they show up.
You beat me to it. I was going to go to the end, because then, they're not true documentarians because they interfere with their subjects.
Yes. But then also they allude to knowing what's going to happen, what has happened, what may happen. So what's the plan here? If you already know everything that's going to happen, what difference does it make when you shoot it or when you don't shoot it? Because apparently everything happens, right? Like whether they shoot it or not, it has happened. That's something that they say at some point. Like the girl's like, what happens if you remember it wrong? Is it better to not remember it than remember it wrong? I'm thinking, this is pretty early in the movie, I'm really thinking, okay, so do you guys make the decision of what wrong is in this scenario, right? Like whatever you shoot is the right thing, and then everything else that didn't get shot is the wrong thing. But then when you look at what the old man has in his office, his home office, whatever, where he has a cat, he has all the multiple options. So that's not it. I don't understand why they're there, Alex. I wish that they removed that, because they're just like an extra element that makes things confusing. And they also have the really annoying line. I think they share it with the old man, where they talk about time being a circle. There's no beginning, there's no end. Everything is just going in circles. And that anytime somebody makes that reference, I have to think of Matthew McConaughey in True Detective.
Well, someone once told me time is a flat circle. everything we've ever done or will do, we're gonna do over and over and over again.
That was before this. That was the first season of True Detective. So it was before Quantum Cowboys tried to sound profound with that idea, which doesn't make any sense. It's I couldn't tell you what these guys are. They're annoying. That's what it is. They're superfluous.
And I promise you, it's even more confusing than what Julio was just trying to explain.
Yes, that was me trying to explain it. I'll give you this, or I'll give the movie this and the filmmakers. If you're going to go with a low budget production of this story, it's a very clever idea to build in a justification, for the aesthetic. It was like, oh, why does it look like, they couldn't finish the animation half the time? Oh, it's because it's just a memory. This is an alternate reality. This doesn't. Why is it lit so weird? Why does it look like the green screen wasn't lit properly? Oh no, that's just this reality, man. Just to make sure, just so you know that this is intentional. There's a couple times where we're going to show you a scene that's properly lit and properly blocked. But most of the time, it just looks unfinished, and I don't like it, but I'll give him props for at least coming up with a justification for it. Did it get on your nerves how unfinished everything looked?
I guess that's a perfect segue into the aesthetic of this movie. I believe I read they used over 12 different types of animation style to present this story. And I get the idea of that is to keep the viewer always guessing as to, are we on the same timeline? Which version of the reality of these characters are we in, et cetera, et cetera. Personally, I just got really annoyed. Anytime the actors are live action, they're in front of a green screen, which of course, is going to fucking chap my ass, except for when they're in the desert in the middle of the night, which is possibly the best scene in the whole movie. And it leads to, the violence in this is presented in different styles of animation. If it sounds exhausting, it is aesthetically. And like I said, it's sensory overload because you can't get used to the way this movie's going, because the next scene it's going to be, it never goes to the point of like animation or anything like that, but there's like cell shading, and then there's really minimalistic animation, and then there's like the characters are superimposed over like a paper background and shit. So I did not feel it added anything to the story, so I found myself just kind of rolling my eyes at every change in visual tone, and honestly by the end just like, this is so goddamn pretentious. That's how I ended up feeling.
I think the problem is that there's no real reason beyond the very general, we're talking about endless possibilities when it comes to something happening, so we're going to give you endless depictions of it. But I think that it would work better if you actually had a pattern, right? If the animation style affected the performances, affected the portrayal of the characters, then I would be kind of interested, because they would be a little bit more like a puzzle, right? Oh, so when they're black and white, they have this dynamic, but when they are photorealistic, they have a different dynamic. And I'm not saying that it's going to make more sense than it does now, but this movie is not interested in making sense. So at least keep my interest, because you're right. It gets old really fast. I would say it takes us, man, this is the Alex Maddis special, because it takes a solid 10 to 15 minutes before we get the opening titles, right? It's a big cold open before we get hit with Quantum Cowboys and the opening credits. And by the end of that opening sequence, you figure it out. You're like, oh, it's just for the look of it. It's not because it actually means anything. That specific type of animation they use for a specific scene doesn't have any sort of relation with what the scene is about. It's just like, oh, well, they rolled the dice. It's like, all right, this is the one that we're going to use for the next 30 seconds, 40 seconds. So yeah, it gets old really fast. At first, it's kind of like, oh, what else will they do? And then after a while, it's just like, all right, moving on. This is something interesting.
So we should talk about our main characters here. It is Frank and Bruno, who are just kind of some, for lack of a better term, ranch hands that work in this town they're shit shovelers. Ranch hands is probably too dignified for them, I guess. They're not necessarily cowboys or criminals, but
one of them.
Well, yes, I was about to say they're not career criminals. Bruno specifically seems to have a heart of gold, but Frank gets them into some deep trouble here in the beginning where he attempts to rob a local shop, and The sheriff of the town tries to chase him, goes to shoot him. He is tripped by a mysterious figure, and the bullet goes astray and kills a man named Blackie, who's a local musician. And so begins his stint in jail. He's there for 3 years. You know you're in for something, Julio, when you're already trying to figure it out, and then it hits you with the title card 3 years later.
No. That sequence, by the way, is probably the most straightforward narrative in the movie. That little bit of him going into the store to try to steal it, the sheriff walking in on him trying to escape, and then the shot missing him and killing the musician. I was like, all right, I'll forgive you the bullshit animation if the rest of the story is gonna be as easy to follow as this was. But even then, right? Because there's a sinister close up of David Arquette also shooting. You're like, what's going on with this guy,
brother? Yeah.
So Frank, the one that goes to jail, the fuck up, not the one with the heart of gold. Mm-hmm. He is Hispanic, right? That is according to the movie, because there's a line. The one of the prison wardens or whatever says something about how, like, oh, you immigrants always get the directions wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff that happens in the movie that kind of leads to Lily Gladstone refers to Frank at some point. I was like, he says something like, oh, well, that character doesn't like brown people, when he's asking why she didn't take him, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Bruno, I think Bruno's supposed to be American, because that's the whole point of Lily Gladstone marrying him later, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking because what's the deal with Bruno's accent? I mean, you're the accent person more than I am, but like, because at first I thought...
I was going to ask you. Yeah. I guess he's from a different timeline.
Oh, that's what's going on. Okay, but I wasn't like imagining it, right? Like, he has an accent that makes it sound like he is not from your average Western. He's not American.
I was confused by it to begin with, of just, trying to figure out where this guy's supposed to be from. And the gentleman who plays Bruno in this, John Way, I don't know how much of an actor he is, because it really feels like at times it's shtick. And I don't know, is it supposed to be?
Excellent question. That was okay. I'm glad you brought it up, because now I can pile on and say, like, yeah, dude, I didn't know if, like, is that just that's how he talks, like that's his accent. They got a guy that, you know, he may be from like the Netherlands or something, and they're like, that's okay, you're gonna pretend to be an American cowboy. Like, fuck it, multiple realities, nobody's going to question your accent.
Sometimes the opposite of a prison is still a prison, Frank.
So then he runs into Bruno goes to the wrong prison, but then on the way to the correct prison, he runs into Frank, and I'm already thinking, oh, are they crossing paths in different timelines? Are they coming from different places? And this is the brain worms this movie embeds.
That's pretty interesting. You actually jumped ahead. You got ahead of the movie.
I guess so. And then our villains here, David Arquette, who plays Colfax, and then Frank Mosley, who plays Depew. We kind of bounce back and forth between them and Frank and Bruno until, you know, they inevitably cross paths. But we learn that they're from contemporary times because they're developing a plan of how to pass off Led Zeppelin's music as their own. And we get a bit of an explanation from memory here about, you know, they went back in time with the same stupid idea that all these people have of trying to invent things before they happen. And it just adds a whole, it doesn't pay off either. They don't become Led Zeppelin or anything like that. It's just introduced, I guess, to let us know that they're dangerous because they're from the future.
Yeah, but there is no, okay, maybe I missed it. So here, maybe you can help me out, Alex. Why do they want to kill Bruno and Frank?
That I don't know. He does offend him with his table manners, but I don't know if that was enough to make him want to kill him. More so, that develops now that they eventually want to kill Frank and Bruno. But what the premise of the movie becomes is that Frank wants to find Blackie because he doesn't think he died while Bruno's telling him he died. And so he wants to find him to prove that he's still alive. But why? He's out of prison. Like... It's not going to matter now. It's
these two things, actually, Alex, are tied together in the way that the architect the narrator, memory. The old man with the cat. It's funny because for all the exposition that this movie gives you, there's like 2 moments where it just completely it's like, I'm not even going to try to be esoteric. I'm just going to tell you things that you're not seeing because, I don't know, the screenplay didn't care. One is with Frank and Bruno, right? They reunite. Now they're just kind of roaming the Old West with their horses, or the horse and the zebra. And then Memory, the narrator, says something like, something along the lines of Bruno had lost all respect for Frank because he saw him as a killer. And so Frank, in order to regain control for his life, he had to regain the respect of his friend. And so he needed to find Blackie, the guy that he killed, claiming that he hadn't killed him. And so he explains to you why they need to find Blackie. I was like, that would have been a nice conversation to have between the 2 characters. I never got the feeling that they were really close friends, or I never felt it. You know, I know the movie told me, but I was like, why does he care? You know, if Bruno has a problem with Frank having accidentally killed Blackie, then that's a scene that I want to see play out in a really powerful way. I don't need like the old man with the cat to kind of explain it to me in 2 sentences and then move on to the next trippy animation, you know? So that seems, I think that's one of the problems of the movie. One of the engines is, we need to find Blackie, because Blackie is going to determine, you know, if once we find Blackie alive, then that proves that Frank is innocent of having accidentally caused the death of a man, and then life will be good again. But if you don't really feel that conflict, if you don't understand why they need to find Blackie, it's like, how can you even believe that Blackie is still alive? Then it kind of falls apart. And it's the exact same thing with David Arquette and not Matthew Fox, right? He says that they're from the future, and then he says they knew that in order to get back to the way things were, they needed Frank to lead them, but that past was already fixed. So instead they had to kill him. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I don't understand. That's what I was asking. I was like, maybe I missed a vital thing, but it's like, how does killing Frank suddenly sends them back to the present day? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You're. I'm just gonna stare at you with a blank glare and be like, yeah, sure, why not? Because then we're not far off from introducing the concept of like these ghosts and spirits that we're not sure where they come from. Specifically, like Alex Cox shows up multiple times as the same character, but then we don't know him from previously.
Wait, is this the drunk priest, or is it the guy that whose wife or ex-wife sold the shirts but kept the pants?
No, Alex Cox is the priest.
Okay. He is going for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he directed Sid and Nancy, amongst other things, so I'm a fan of his.
Oh, man. Okay, well, as long as we're talking about classic cinema, did you... no, I'm serious. Did you notice, or did you know who Anna Karina is?
No.
Okay, but you saw that they dedicated the movie to her at the end credits?
Yes.
Okay.
She played Inspiration in the movie, yeah. Yeah,
so she has like it's just one short sequence in the movie. I think it's when they're talking about Blackie, the musician's past, and they show, I guess, what's supposed to be the live action Blackie playing music, and then there's this old lady that's listening to him and smiling, and there's like lots of close-ups of her. So she's Anna Karina, who I was like, that name sounds familiar. And so I looked it up after the movie was over. And Anna Karina, I've seen one movie of hers, which was a movie made by my nemesis, perhaps even your nemesis, Alex Godard.
Jean-Luc Godard. He of Weekend. He also made a movie called Pierre Lefort. I think that's what it's called. That was my first Godard movie that I watched, and I wish it had been my last. It's supposed to be a comedy. It's really weird. And Anna Karina is really, in my humble opinion, the only reason to watch it, because she's much younger back then, and she is just luminous. And I remember watching the movie, I'm like, I guess it kind of makes sense that she would be on. It's very on brand for her to be on this movie, because Pierre Lefort doesn't make any sense. It's just like a very absurd comedy. This dude having adventures that make no sense. He meets Anna Karina. They have more adventures that don't make any sense, and so on. And the entire time I was just like, man, she's really pretty, and every now and then she makes me laugh with some of the stuff, but overall, I don't know what's happening. So I guess the dude that wrote and directed this, he's a fan, and he was like, hey, I need just one shot of somebody that's going to be the inspiration, not just for the character, but also maybe for the entire movie.
And I was reading, apparently this was her last movie. Like, this was her last role. I guess she passed away after they shot this.
Yeah. Like you said, the movie's dedicated to her.
She was like, I'm closing my career the same way as I started it, with a screenplay that makes absolutely no sense.
The question is, which of these universes extinguishes the others? Will Blackie live to play that third song? His past says he doesn't, but his future says he does.
Fortunately, we're introduced to a true star as Lily Gladstone shows up here. Her character is Lindy, and she, first of all, Frank gets taken for a ride, and Bruno does a trade, and he's given a zebra that he believes is a horse, an African horse. Lily Gladstone sets him straight and said, "They ain't no horse, it's a zebra." So probably going to pronounce it like that next time I go to the zoo and see a zebra. But anyway, Lily Gladstone shows up. She tricks these guys into trekking across the desert of Arizona with her because she's going to claim some land that was left to her by her father. Whilst in the desert, they're followed by David Arquette and his crony. They attempt to rob and kill the trio, but it backfires on them as this gun like explodes in Depew's hand. This is all while Frank had eaten some cactus, I guess, for nutrition and potentially hydration, and ended up on a trip that spans, into the next scene here. But to your
potentially
point,
to the rest of the movie.
Yeah. And to your point, Julio, I still am not entirely sure why they are after them.
I don't understand that they've been after them for a while, right? This is if we're talking about time loops, David Arquette is talking about how actually both of them, Arquette and not Matthew Fox, talk about these events as something that they've lived time and again. And at some point, not Matthew Fox says, "Oh, sometimes it's my right hand, sometimes it's my left hand," which means that he knows that his hand's going to blow up. And yet he still goes through the motions that lead to his hand blowing up. How I don't get it. Same thing. At some point, Bruno tells David Arquette, or Arquette tells Bruno, "I'll find you again." And Bruno's like, "We don't even know where we're going. How are you going to find us?" And Arquette says, "I always find you. We always find you." So they've been doing this for a while, and they still can't catch these guys who seem to be pretty inept to begin with. And you would think that with the knowledge of what's going to happen, you'll be able to catch them very easily. But somehow, I guess everybody is pretty incompetent in the movie, except for Lily Gladstone, who, by the way, do you remember what her quirk is, Alex? Because she can't just be a woman in a Western. She has to have a quirk.
And what is that?
That she carries bullets, like an assortment of random bullets in a pouch. And then Frank tells her, "Well, that's kind of weird, isn't it?" And then she said, "Just as weird as carrying a gun with no bullets." You would think that those are the two are going to get married.
Yeah, there's an issue where she doesn't load the gun that she has with the bullets. She can't bring herself to do it. So, yeah, anyway, they traverse the terrain. They run into some more characters. Yeah, here's my note. Why do Arquette and friend want them dead? A mysterious figure with a red mask appears and warns David Arquette, if you return to Yuma, if you go to Yuma, you'll regret it. Both Bruno and Frank end up on a random ranch where the guy treats them to a bath because he informs them that they stink. Lindy finds them and takes them back on the quest that they're on. As you mentioned, she ends up marrying Bruno so that they can claim her land. My note here, the film crew is back. She does get the land back. This spawns some animosity between Frank and Bruno, I think, over beefing over, Frank. I mean, Lily Gladstone's a pretty woman. I think he wanted an opportunity.
I mean, they had a moment, right? When they're in the campfire and they're talking about the stars. And I guess she has moments with both of them. Because at first she has a moment with Bruno where they're talking about whiskey, where she's like, "Oh, don't you know you should never drink after a white man?"
Yeah. She informs white man, "You all have the same thing, greed." And I was like, okay, that was a good line. The mysterious red masked man shows back up and provides a series of bullets to Lily Gladstone and tells her, essentially, "You'll know why I'm giving these to you and you'll know when to use them." Lindy basically puts on to Bruno that she used him and tells him basically to get lost. And so Bruno and Frank take off. It's not too long before they're reunited, though, and Lindy informs him, "I do like you."
Just kidding.
Exactly. But this is the whole last act of the movie is a replaying of a sequence of events over and over and over again, where we return to the beginning of the movie where they're back in this town and Frank is trying to go warn his past self not to do it, but it keeps going awry and they keep finding themselves dying. And so they have to respawn and do it all over again.
Yeah, David Arquette and his buddy keep getting the drop on them finally. There's a portal. The appearance of the portal marks the movie's descent into madness for that final 20 minutes or whatever, right? There's like this little arch made of stones, and then there's, they go through it, and that's when things get complicated. And at some point, one of the narrators, I guess the old man, says something like, "Oh, now they're not even in the same timeline." I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's my note is like, wait, they're in different timelines now? Because it's this like gateway built of stone that I guess transports you to a different timeline.
But they are in the same timeline.
They are.
Like the characters, I mean, they're talking, right? It's not like you see Frank and you see Bruno on screen, but they don't see each other because they're in different timelines. Like, they're interacting. So I just didn't understand what he meant. Dude, I mean, I'm sure there are probably people that worked in this movie that can explain to you exactly what happens, why they say each thing and what each thing means and how. No, it all makes sense, man. But when you're watching it, if you're just somebody that watched the movie, I fucking challenge you to make sense of it, to actually come up with something that explains it in a way that makes sense. Because I don't think it's possible. I get the feeling that this is just, it's there for the visuals, it's there for like the vibes, but it's not there for the logic of the plot. And that's why, this last bit, what it reminded me of? Have you seen Blazing Saddles, the Mel Brooks movie?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember at the end how you get to the climax and Mel Brooks kind of like throws his hands in the air and he's like, fuck it, we're going to break the fourth wall, and now suddenly we're going to reveal that we're making a movie, and characters and actors from other movies being shot on the lot are going to cross over. And it's just this big set piece where it stops being a Western and it becomes, for about, 10 minutes or so, it's just a movie set, and people and actors and characters are just like clashing, and it's weird, it's bananas, but it's funny. So it works. Because even though it has very little to do with the movie that was happening before and the movie that happens after, because, when it's over, they kind of have the epilogue. You're like, I don't care because it's entertaining. It's funny. And, that's not the case here. Here, when you get into a stretch of like 15, 20 minutes of them going over and over the same shit, I was just antsy. And I'm like, none of this makes sense. It's not funny. It's not entertaining. Can this please end? Can we get to the final loop?
I have Wayne's World ending in my notes, the ending to the first Wayne's World, where they just retake, I think, 2 or 3 times. They're like, let's do the Scooby-Doo ending. Diddly-loo, 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 diddly-loo. Let's do the happy ending. Yeah, so we have similar trains of thought on this. But yeah, it's just repetitious until they get it right. And each time they go back, there's a different form of animation. We learn that Frank was the masked red man from the future, trying to help set up a scenario in which he gets the ending that he wants, and that Blackie lives, et cetera, et cetera. They end up dying. It's reminiscent of source code of just like resetting and try it again. God damn it. I think this is where we figure out that Lily Gladstone is the person who tripped him because she's from a different timeline. But then it all is for naught because the 3 of them riding on their horses run into the guy whose pants he bought earlier in the movie. And somehow through his speech about pants and shirts, Frank gives up on the idea of trying to write the past. And I don't know. The film crew shows back up and they have to
they're like, wait, where's everybody?
They have to reframe a scene. Yeah, it's I appreciate kind of the idea of you can't change the past, but that's a pretty simple allegory to make. We don't need a 90-minute film that makes little to no sense to get to that message.
Well, especially because he does change the past, right? By choosing not to do something that was going to lead him down that way, then he does change the past. So
yes, watch Looper instead.
She kept the pants and threw away the shirts. Ah! Yeah!
What does that mean?
It means I still got half a chance.
Yeah, I don't think the movie is as profound as it thinks it is, or at least as it's trying to tell us it is. There's a lot of, highbrow philosophizing in this movie from many characters, not just from the architect / narrator / memory, but from pretty much anybody that gets a little bit of monologue or an extended conversation. My note says the dialogue is like if Noah Baumbach was trying to ape the style of it's Craig Zahler, but they were trying to do a sci-fi movie. They don't talk like real people. They speak in catchphrases sometimes, but not like fun catchphrases, but instead kind of pretentious catchphrases. Remember in Marriage Story, you probably blocked it out of your mind, but there's a moment when Scarlett Johansson has this really long monologue when she's talking to Laura Dern about her relationship with Adam Driver, how it was. And at some point she says, the talking was not about the talking, except that the talking was also about the talking, because you know how in a relationship, everything is a little bit about everything.
I guess I vaguely remember that. I do remember anchovies.
Well, that's a different kind of annoying dialogue. But here they say shit like what's the little bullshit pattern that they keep repeating? Something like the opposite of this is also this, right? Like sometimes the opposite of a coincidence is also a coincidence. Sometimes the opposite of opportunity is also opportunity. Bruno, when he first picks up Frank, he says something like, sometimes being out of prison is also a prison. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So when you have that level of dialogue, of conversation, man, you better bring it at the end. You have to really give me a solid entry into the meaning of life sweepstakes. I really want to know, okay, why are we on this planet? For 99 minutes, you've just fed me all this bullshit about alternate timelines and the possibilities of memories and the, I guess, unreliability of memories and what makes something the truth and whatever. But then you get to the end and there's no real statement about it, right? Mm-mm. He just walks away from the loop that he was trapped in. And then what? The old guy with the cat says, well, we'll see how long these two cowboys can keep the box closed. The Schrodinger's box because of the cat, Schrodinger's cat. Man, I know it doesn't make sense here. It doesn't make sense in the movie either. But the idea is like what? That we'll see how long until they go back to Yuma and eventually he ends up killing Blackie or causing Blackie's death. Mm-hmm. Or is it that, he fucked up in Yuma causing the death of Blackie, which means that, well, maybe he can walk away from Yuma, but he's still a fuck up. So he's going to fuck up in the future. What about Lily Gladstone? How does she fit in? What about Arquette and his buddy? Like, are they going to still follow them? Right? Arquette says, I always find you. That means that he's still going to find him no matter where he goes. Which I guess, Alex, maybe the reason that we have all these questions is because this movie has the audacity when it's all over and the credits start rolling to reveal that this is part one of the...
I rewound it to make sure I didn't see wrong and I was like, fuck off.
At first I thought it said part one of the Arizona trilogy, but then I went back. It was like, no, it's the Arizona Antilogy. And I was like, did they misspell anthology? But no, I looked it up and I will read you the definition because I took a screenshot. Antilogy, a contradiction in terms or ideas, which makes about as much sense as the rest of the movie. What the fuck is the Arizona Antilogy? I tell you one thing, I'm not coming back for part 2.
So the only question now is, how long can those two cowboys keep this box shut?
It would be so, I wouldn't say cynical, like an act of bad faith, if you made us sit through 99 minutes of this just because you were setting up the next chapter. Like that would be the worst, like the purest example of one of the worst trends in modern cinema. Like the idea of like, oh, you can't just tell a self-contained story. You have to create, let's not call it a universe, but a little franchise. You have to tell me a 3-parter at least. You can't just stop at one. It was so annoying. And I was like, okay, so is this why I'm scratching my head when it's all over? Because it's not over. There's more Arizona adventures. We're going to keep following Frank and Bruno and Lily Gladstone for another weird animation trip. I don't know. What did you walk away with when it's all over, Alex? What was your thought as the credits rolled?
I liked the credits, the way it looked, how it was like old-timey paintings of all the actors involved, but I didn't really have any thoughts. I was just like, well, that was something. That was something I watched. And I immediately turned to like, okay, how are we going to talk about this in Contrarians Corner? And kind of played out how I thought. Like we were just going to talk about the big beats, but more of just rail on the pretension level of the execution. I think my immediate thought was like, what the fuck was the point of the film crew? But we've kind of discussed, and I think we have an idea of what it's supposed to mean or represent in the movie. But yeah, I didn't. Any thoughts I had were more of just kind of like scoffing at that movie.
Well, as I was scoffing, this is something that I was thinking throughout the entire thing. And then when it was over, I'm like, yep, this is what it is. Because I was looking at that 100% fresh Tomatometer score and just looking at the quotes and just how people were talking about it and looking around a little bit. I mean, you probably saw it too. Like, I don't think this got an actual release. I think this is mostly just like a festival darling that eventually got distribution.
Yeah.
And that was my final thought, like the conclusion I arrived to was like, this is very much a festival movie. This is the movie that you make to do festival rounds, not to secure distribution and actually make money because you're expecting the average Joe to really get it, right? This movie, Quantum Cowboys, is not worried about being mainstream. It's worried about making a splash and getting critics talking and just tricking film buffs into thinking, oh, well, it's good. It's a Western like nothing I've seen before. But they know that what this is gonna open the Cinemark closest to you. No, this is and the studio knows that too. So who was the poor schmuck that got saddled with like, all right, we bought Quantum Cowboys. You figure out how we're gonna distribute it. And how do you watch it? I had it on Amazon Prime.
Prime. I watched half of it on Tubi and the other half on Amazon Prime, but it's also on YouTube TV, so it's out there. It's available.
They're like, it will live on streaming forever.
I mean, this is a movie meant for Tubi, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way.
I was gonna say that can mean many different things depending on the movie you're talking about. I mean, Tubi is probably the best example of the platform that would welcome this kind of thing because there's everything on Tubi. There's no quality control. There's just goodwill. I'm like, here, we'll show your movie. That's okay.
Well, Julio, I don't know what timeline we ended up in here, but whichever one it is, should we try to meet in real talk?
I'm just gonna scream your name until you show up.
Thank you,
Alex.
Not as pretty as Lily Gladstone, so I'll do my best.
All right, let's go real talk.
Let's do.
I'm beat this time.